What is up, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Zach. Ashton is out this week, but I brought on a special guest, Blaine, with the Turf Show Times, to talk to us all about the 2025 NFL Combine. How are you, Blaine?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, and it's good to see you again after grabbing lunch last week in Indy. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's always great to be able to connect with you, especially, I'm glad you got to come out to Indianapolis and enjoy, the Hoosier hospitality, and really kind of enjoy the sights and the food that we have in downtown.
Yeah, no, Indy, it's such a just like one thing that I appreciate about it. It's such a walkable city. Like I think I got 2 Ubers the entire time, and it was to get to and from the airport, and that was it. And then the food is just, you obviously got St. Elmo's and Harry and Izzy's and bunch of good bars and some stuff. So yeah, it was a good time.
Yes, and I can't wait. We're gonna dive into everything of the NFL Combine here in just a few minutes. But first, let's break some of the news that has happened over the last few days. We recorded last Thursday, and kind of thinking, hey, is Stafford in? Is Stafford out? That was one of the biggest things, I think, outside of the player prospects at the Combine. That was the biggest news of the week, was what's happening with Stafford. Is he leaving? Is he staying? What's happening? And not to my surprise, but to many people's surprise, that he is indeed staying. We still don't know exactly what that contract restructure looks like, but he will remain a Ram for at least another year. And based on the conversation he had on his wife's podcast, it seems like he will hopefully be here for the 2026 season as well. So let's talk about just briefly about the Stafford contract. He was rumored to be courted by Tom Brady and the Raiders. Also, his brother-in-law now works as a QB coach for the Giants. What was your take? Were you surprised that he decided to? What makes it seem like he might have taken less money to stay with the Rams?
No, I'm not really surprised at all. Just kind of hearing what McVay has said afterwards, where they kind of they were never really too worried that he would go somewhere else, and just even listening to Stafford, like it kind of they never wanted to leave Los Angeles, and just kind of go. Just it seemed like the Stafford news was the talk of Indianapolis for the first couple days, or really the entire week. I mean, you couldn't go in a room without somebody having a conversation about Matthew Stafford and his future with the Rams, and just kind of the vibes that I got just walking around. Like everybody really expected him to be back in Los Angeles, and that's what happened. And at the end of the day, this is kind of how negotiations work in the NFL. You have agents pushing out one story like, "Hey, we're interested in this team. This team's interested in us," and you have the teams pushing out another story like, "Hey, we're for the Rams case. Hey, we're fine moving along with Jimmy Garoppolo or Aaron Rodgers," when really that's probably not the case. It's just kind of how things go, and at the end they came together, and I think it works out. I mean, we've known Stafford wants to end his career as a potential Hall of Famer, and I think the best place for him to do that is with Sean McVay in Los Angeles, and not where quarterbacks go to die in Las Vegas and New York.
100%. I think this all came to around about Sean McVay. If Sean McVay retired, let's say 2 years ago when he was at that break and this contract was happening, I think Stafford probably either would have been done or would have been out the door. I do think that the communication that him and McVay have is very unique in the quarterback coach room. They both think highly of themselves and of each other. And yeah, I never really strayed away from it. I just think that there was nothing else to talk about. There was no other really contentious stories out there in, taking on, the whole Stafford moved on from one team. He probably could move on to another team. Teams were going to be desperate to pick up quality caliber quarterback like Stafford. And they were willing to pay a premium for him and most likely give away a first round pick to the LA Rams as well. But
Everything that I kept on here was like the Raiders will make a big push if Matthew Stafford were to leave Los Angeles, but like it always just seemed like that if was a pretty big if. And I think you touched on a really great point, and that's the Sean McVay effect. I mean, Stafford's on the verge of a holdout last year, and it ends with Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay in a room, get push the front office execs and the agents to the side, and let's just sit down, coach the quarterback, and let's work this thing out. And that's kind of exactly what happened this time as well. It's Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford in a room at 6:30 in the morning in Los Angeles, and hammering out a contract that works for both sides. And it's just one of those many moments that we've had over the last 8 years now, where you are thankful that it is Sean McVay at the helm.
Yeah, I mean, and realistically, you look at the Sean McVay timeline while he's here, and there haven't really been those players who want to leave LA. They're always confused why they are getting pushed out of LA, and that's usually more of the front office, making the money work, maybe a lingering injury here or there, but not many players want to leave the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, Deshaun Jackson was probably the biggest the biggest one, and that was just because of unutilization going through the Super Bowl year. Bringing on OBJ, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp had an outstanding year. So there were good reasons why he wanted to leave. But other than that, really, everyone else, there has never been a controversial, like, I need to leave this team.
It's spot on, and I think it kind of shows too is just how much Sean McVay has grown as a coach, and I think he brought it up in his press conference earlier this week, and I think Stafford kind of brought it up too, and Kelly talked about it as well. It's just kind of how much he's grown from the Goff situation. I think McVay said just kind of, and Stafford touched on it, like they were willing to kind of sit down and have those man-to-man uncomfortable conversations and be okay with it. And Kelly on the podcast earlier this week too said that one thing that she really commends about Sean McVay, one of his best attributes is his ability to communicate with people, and I think just that growth just is something that he lacked earlier in his career that he's I think made a point to improve on, and I think he has.
Yeah, I agree. And Sean McVay inserting himself in this process as well, not just taking a backseat and letting this be a discussion between the GM and the agent, but really a discussion between all parties. What is beneficial for Matthew Stafford and his family? What's beneficial for the Rams? And how can we do this in the right way? Obviously, I think Sean McVay doesn't like to get rid of players, but I think that there is a mathematical reason. There is a historical stat reason. We look at Cooper Kupp, and he's still on the trade block. I feel like there was, when Stafford was, restructured in his contract, I think there was a lot more hope that maybe that they'll figure out a way to keep Stafford. But especially from the conversations that Sean McVay had throughout his kind of all-day press media avails that he went through on Monday, and then Lesney's comments yesterday, make it really seem like that door is pretty much closed. They obviously will never say never, but it is very, very unlikely that Cooper Kupp will remain a Ram. And now reports are that it's more so looking like he will be cut.
Yeah. It's one of those, like, the ugly business parts of football, I guess. I mean, and I think that we would have all loved to see Cooper Kupp retire as a Ram. And unfortunately, the contract side of it just isn't going to allow that to happen. It's hard to, it's hard to, I guess, be okay with paying Kupp just with the injuries and everything, paying him close to $30 million this season. And then you've had Christian Kirk got traded to the Texans earlier today on Thursday. Deebo Samuel got traded, so there's just the options to trade Kupp are just kind of dwindling a little bit, and for a team to take on that cap where a release probably unfortunately makes most sense. But at the same time, like, if he is released, he'll get to he was going to be able to choose anyway had he gotten traded. The Rams weren't going to ship him off to Cleveland or anything like that. But he'll get a chance to kind of see what his market is and where his best fit will be.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rams they really wanted to get a pick out of him. I think they knew that they weren't going to get a lot from Kupp just because of that hefty price tag that he does have on him. But we all thought there was thought that maybe he would be good for the Commanders. Well, the Commanders just picked up Debo. Now Metcalf is now available on that trade market, and like you said, Christian Kirk and a couple other people. Lockett is getting released. It's very weird that some of these players that have been key players on teams are now shifting away from pretty much their start off teams.
Yeah, I think it just kind of shows that like teams don't really love the free agent the wide receiver free agent market, especially just being willing to take on these contracts. Like it's not very often that you'll see a team just, okay, yeah, we'll take on that $17 or $18 million or whatever that is. And the Bears did it twice with two offensive linemen, Jonah Jackson being one of them. And then the Commanders and Texans both took on the entire contracts of those players as well. Yeah, I think just obviously the Bengals franchise tag T. Higgins, and I think there's some optimism with Chris Godwin potentially going back to Tampa Bay. So there's not a lot of free agent options at wide receivers, and there's a surplus of wide receivers looking to move teams that teams looking to trade. So it's just one of those things that kind of worked out, I guess.
How do you feel? There's a lot of also talk because of Metcalf and some of these other receivers. How would you feel about a Metcalf coming to the Rams? Me personally, I don't like it. That may just be my bias because of him being with the Seahawks, but just some of the things that I've seen on the field. I know Sean McVay can help those who maybe are a little bit more difficult or what is perceived difficult on the field or off the field. But I just don't feel that vibe with a McVay offense.
Yeah, the personality aside, there are probably 28 teams in the NFL that the Seahawks would trade DK Metcalf to, and I find it very hard to believe that the Rams are at the top of that list. But I think just fit aside, like Metcalf, even coming out of college at Ole Miss, he just like one reason why he really slipped down draft boards is because he had a very slow 3-cone time at the combine, and a 3-cone time is directly correlated to a player's ability to quickly change direction, and for a wide receiver that kind of works in tune with route running. And DK is he's very good on a vertical plane and beating a cornerback deep down the field with the speed. But as far as we know Sean McVay really values very good route runners, and that's just not DK. And I think he's also a player too, where he's this athletic just phenomenon. He's going to be one of the more athletic players on the field, but he just doesn't play that way. I don't think he doesn't out physical a lot of cornerbacks. We've seen even like some of the Rams' smaller cornerbacks like Darius Williams, Kobe Durant kind of have their way with him a little bit. And so, so I think just personality aside, likelihood that the Seahawks would consider trading him to the Rams aside, I just think like the route running is just one of those things that is unique in the Sean McVay offense. That's not his strong suit.
Yeah, for sure. But the Rams are bringing back Tutu Atwell. He was up for free agency, and now they have signed him to a 1-year, $10 million contract. Seems like it's fully guaranteed. $5 million is his salary, and then a $5 million bonus. So again, keeping some familiarity to Stafford, giving him a second or third option right now when obviously Kupp is most likely going to be released, and then obviously the Demarcus Robinson situation where it's kind of unknown where he stands with the Rams. Les Snead said that because of the legal issues that he's currently facing back from the regular season, that they haven't had any talks about contracts. I think we're all kind of surprised that they're bringing back Tutu Atwell and kind of so quickly. It feels like as things progress. What are your thoughts about Tutu bringing him back?
Yeah, I was not. I am happy he's back. I think just when he's gotten the opportunity the last 2 years, last in 2023 when Cup was out to start the year. Atwell stepped right in and was right up there with Puka Nakua's production there over the first kind of 4 to 6 weeks, and then this past season again with Nakua and Cup both hurt. It was Tutu Atwell that really stepped up alongside Jordan Whittington, and yeah, so I was, so I'm happy he's back, but I was also very pleasantly surprised. I guess I kind of thought it was one of those things where Atwell might be a cheaper free agent wide receiver that a team like the Falcons or Chiefs or the Bills would be able to sign for cheap, and he'd have a really good year next year, and we'd be wondering why he wasn't able to do that or why the Rams didn't use him like that when he was in Los Angeles. So I'm glad that the Rams were able to work something out with him, and I think that hopefully comes along with a stipulation that he gets more playing time next year and gets a little bit more usage, because like I said, when the Rams have used him, when he has gotten opportunities on the field, he's made plays. So yeah, I'm happy he's back. I don't think it takes away them potentially drafting a wide receiver in the first round or even signing a Devontae Adams if that's something that they're interested in. But like you said, it's just if they're not bringing back DeMarcus Robinson, which it doesn't sound like they are, bringing back some familiarity with someone like Atwell, I think is really good.
Yeah, I mean, you take away that, you're really down to Whittington, Puka, and now Tutu. Obviously, there's some potential with, some of, Xavier Smith. Is he a free agent? Or is he still on the roster?
Yeah. Xavier Smith is still on the roster, yeah.
Yeah, so he's on the roster. So they have some more familiarity, but Tutu Atwell has been within the Sean McVay system for so long that, again, familiar with the playbook, familiar with the route running, can help in, also developing new wide receivers, especially, again, not having Cup there. You're going to rely really on now Puka and now on Tutu, I think, to really start helping develop your next wave of rookies, and then obviously second year Whittington. But the other thing that I will say about this new wide receiver group is, especially with Puka and Whittington, they're still training with Cooper Kupp, which also just tells you, I think, a little bit more character about Cooper Kupp too, that he is still willing to train and develop receivers that on a team that is basically kind of kicking them out the door. So again, another good reason why Cooper Kupp is a very unique NFL player.
Yeah, for sure. I think it just speaks to kind of that relationship that that him and Puka have built over the last 2 years. And if they're training now, hopefully after Kupp has played out his career, and hopefully it's a very successful he has a very successful later stages of his career. Hopefully he comes back and can join the coaching staff in some way, shape, or form, because he's one of the I think one of the smarter players in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cooper Kupp, whatever he does in the future, I really do hope that he comes back and takes, whatever that 1-day deal or whatever to actually retire as a Ram. Yep. I think that would be pretty amazing, because again, he has built a legacy here in LA, and I am going to root for him no matter, really what team he goes for, unless it's the 49ers, and I can't help that at all. So yeah, that's kind of really it about the big news of the week. Like you mentioned, Jonah Jackson, he is now going to be a Bear. Thankful to the Bears for taking his whole salary with them, so it really saves the Rams in cap space. I think that's probably one of the better moves that Les Snead has done as far as moving players off the Rams roster and not taking such a big cap hit.
Yeah, for sure. I think it would have been very easy for the front office to go into this offseason and say, hey, let's just blame injuries and whatnot and just run it back and see if it works. And I'm glad that they aren't taking that approach and are taking the approach of, hey, we bring back Alaric Jackson, who was a stud left tackle for us last year. We Avila was clearly a lot more comfortable and a lot better at left guard. Let's keep him there. Bo Limmer, let's get him a full offseason of work and see how he develops. And you have Kevin Dotson and Rob Havenstein on the right side. So I'm glad they just didn't try to run it back or didn't take the approach of Joe Jackson just being good, very expensive depth. And being able to first admit a mistake, and then being able to dump that entire contract was a huge win.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a mistake in that it didn't work out, but it kind of stunk that we never really saw what it was going to be. Just with all the injuries, we had to shift. Steve Avila was going to be center, and then they swapped them basically, and then Jonah Jackson got injured, Steve Avila got injured, and thankfully we did get Bo Limmer. I think he did a very admirable job at center, and I think a full off season, like you said, will really help develop him, and hopefully he can be a good starting center moving forward. So that kind of wraps up the news of the week. It feels like the Rams are just in their news every single day. I'm glad that we're done talking about Matthew Stafford and we can actually talk about the lead up to the NFL draft, starting with what should have been the biggest news of all last week is the NFL Combine. And so you got to come visit me here in Indianapolis. So really excited that you get to do that. This is your second year, right, of covering the NFL Combine in person?
Yep.
So that's awesome. Is there anything that you've learned from the previous year that you took to this year to get prepared?
Yeah, I think last year, you don't really know what to expect, I guess, and so I was just kind of like a fish out of water a little bit, and kind of just kind of figuring my way around. And so I think this year I kind of knew and knowing what to expect a little bit more, knowing where the conversations happened, knowing where the Starbucks fights were going to be. So
be careful at every Starbucks you went to.
I know. So I think just from that aspect and just knowing where the conversations were going to be was big. And then it is when in the mornings, the players that will come through, and they'll all stand at there's 8 different podiums, and a player will go up to each podium in 20-minute intervals, and host like a mini press conference. And so just knowing that there were going to be probably 20 media members at each podium, and asserting myself to get my questions in was something that I took away from last year and was able to use this year.
Yeah, and if you haven't yet, please go check out all Blaine's articles about the Combine. We're going to try to dive into some of them, but I think I have about 12 tabs open from your work that you've done for the Combine, just prepping myself for this conversation. So please make sure you go to the turfshowtimes.com and please check out all of Blaine's great work on top of all the other great work that is happening there on that site. But yeah, so I kind of mentioned last week, because I kind of gave a preview of kind of my experience going to the Combine as from someone who doesn't have the NFL credentials or the media credentials to do some stuff that you actually got to do. But it is just one of the more unique events in the NFL year where I say all, but obviously probably 30 of the 32 teams were present as far as their coach and GMs being present there. And, like I said, they were just kind of just walking around. They were obviously doing the media veils with you all, having conversations with the prospects, watching them in person in Lucas Oil Stadium. And again, that just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in the draft. It doesn't happen Super Bowl might be the closest time, but there's not all 32 teams usually are somewhat present within that room. So I just want to say how unique of an experience it is.
Yeah, and like you were telling me last week, I mean, you can just be walking across the skywalk or whatever, and Mike McDaniel or a random GM will just walk past you it's nothing. Like they're just going about their thing. It's just it's very unique.
Yeah, and they're just chilling in the hotel lobbies. They're not behind closed doors a lot of the time. I mean, they are, but there's no problem. You just see you see John Harbaugh or Jim Harbaugh, either one, just having lunch at a restaurant, or you go out and you're walking to Starbucks and there's another person. Or I was walking the convention center and I got to meet Sean Payton and like these are and Kevin O'Connell, and it's like it's just such a interesting experience, and something that, like I said, it's very different than any other NFL type event where really everything else is kind of closed off. You're kind of pushed away. There's gates and security and all these things. Like you could never get close to these people anywhere else, but it feels like the NFL Combine.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's spot on, and I hope there's been talk about them potentially moving it, and I hope they do not, because it's the perfect spot for it.
Yes. All right. So let's talk about it. I really kind of want to talk about some of the key players you think the Rams are going to look at. Since this is the Rams podcast, you cover the Rams. I really want to dive into those prospects. So let's talk about kind of the first round for the Rams. They have the 26th pick as of right now. And in your kind of mock draft, you kind of identified wide receiver Matthew Golden from Texas. Can you give us kind of an insight of your thoughts into going into him?
Yeah, I just think he's and he talked about it too during his media availability. It was just he has the ability to line up at, like Sean McVay loves a versatile player. He's somebody that can line up at all three wide receiver spots, and then he's also just a very crisp route runner as well. So that checks another McVay box. I think he could probably improve a little bit in terms of his run blocking. But when we think about what the Rams need at wide receiver, they're missing that player that can win on the boundary and create those explosive plays. And this is in Matthew Golden, despite being, I think he's like 6'1". His ability to win down the field. I think he had 13 catches of 20 plus yards or more last year, 7 of which were contested. His ability just to win along the sideline in those contested catch scenarios, his body control, it's what the Rams are missing at that X wide receiver spot, at that wide receiver spot on the boundary. They haven't ever, I think, really had in a Sean McVay offense. We saw, I think, a glimpse of it with Odell Beckham Jr. But Matthew Golden, he ran, I think, a 4.29 40. He's incredibly fast, incredibly explosive. Just exactly what the Rams are missing at that wide receiver spot. And then another player that I'd really watch 26 too, if he's there, I think, is Colston Loveland. I'm interested to see what the Rams offense looks like next year. I wouldn't be surprised. In 2017, I think McVay came to Los Angeles wanting to run 12 personnel, and I think they came in wanting to run that with Goff, Robert Woods, and Sammy Watkins on the outside with Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett. I think that was the initial plan, and then Cooper Kupp enters the fold, and it's like, hey, we can't keep this guy off the field. We're going to do everything that we do in 11 personnel, and thankfully Cooper Kupp had no issues getting his hands dirty and blocking like a de facto tight end. And so I'm kind of interested to see if he tries to get back to that. And if he does, I could see Colston Loveland in that Cooper Kupp kind of role and being that Cooper Kupp replacement in a sense. Loveland called himself one of the best route runners in the draft, if not the best route runners in the draft. He's never going to be, I think, an inline blocker, but I think he can do it. He can block well enough to get the job done, but just one of those players like Kupp that just take advantage of those matchups in the intermediate areas of the field.
Yeah. So, one of the things that obviously that we're looking at is going to be, what is Sean McVay going to do with the first round pick? We've seen the years past that he really wants a tight end. Obviously, you mentioned Gerald Everett. That was one of his first picks coming into the Rams. We know over the last 2 drafts, he's really wanted to identify and get a really high level tight end. But obviously we have not been able to really do that. He kind of got undercut last year. And I really think that Sean McVay, I mean, he was a tight end coach, if I'm correct, right? Yep. And so like he knows that position, and he knows how useful I think that position can really be to really make that offense explosive. I think we've seen a lot of it from Tyler Higbee, especially when he is on the field, and you can definitely tell when he's not on the field. Things start to degrade really fast. I mean, we tried to throw three different tight ends really over the last 2 seasons, and it has not worked well. And I think that has been a pain point for Sean McVay for the last, at least 2 seasons.
Yeah, I mean they traded for Hunter Long in the Jalen Ramsey trade. They signed Colby Parkinson last year in free agency, and Long has been a decent blocking tight end. He has been a pretty good blocker, but I think we all kind of expected Colby Parkinson to do what Tyler Higbee did, and it never really happened. And then Tyler Higbee comes back in the later stages of the year, and it was like he never left. I mean, so I like I said, I think Sean McVay kind of recognizes that and recognizes how important that tight end position is in the offense. Higbee's kind of getting towards the end of his contract and the end of his career, so adding a player in that spot. In this draft in particular, when it's a pretty deep tight end class, I could definitely see them doing that.
And you want someone who can develop behind Higbee too, like because Higbee has been such a clutch character. Again, do I say he's like an elite tight end? No, but in the Sean McVay offense, he's been very successful. He's able to block, he's able to catch, he's been able to get, whether it was Goff or Stafford out of some tight spaces when his receivers aren't open. And he's just been a reliable set of hands in that offense. And I think, again, having someone to train under him would be an excellent piece and an excellent weapon to add for McVay.
Agreed. Yep, for sure.
Anybody else kind of in that later round that you can think of that you saw from being at the combine that might be able to fit in that 26th role?
Yeah, Jahdae Barron from Texas. He's a safety cornerback, kind of hybrid. I could see him. He tested really well. One of the big things for him was just going to be his wingspan. Just how long his arms were, and he ended up. He didn't quite crack 30 inches, but he was right on the verge there, which is fine. Trent McDuffie from the Chiefs is right on that edge as well. So he did well, and I think he could slot in he could slot in on the defense and kind of have a similar effect as Cooper DeJean did last year for the Eagles. I think you also kind of have to look at cornerback. Azrae Thomas from Florida State, I know, is a guy that a lot of Rams fans have their eyes on. And then Maxwell Harrison from Kentucky, I forget what his 40 time was, but he absolutely flew. I think it was like a 4.32 or something. It was incredibly fast. But he was probably a mid day two guy coming into the combine, and he'll probably go early second round, if not. I think I've seen him in the back end of the first round in some recent mock drafts. So yeah, I think. My thing is, my ideal scenario, I think, would be the Rams getting Golden or Loveland, or the entire NFL overlooks Ted McMillan from Arizona. He somehow falls down the board, and McVay's able to get him. One of those three players, I think, would be ideal. If not, I think trading back. I don't think there's a lot of value difference between the 20th pick in this draft and the 40th pick. So if you can trade back and pick up an extra third, extra fourth round pick, I think that's probably the ideal scenario if you can't get one of those explosive playmakers on offense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you look at this past season, it really felt like the offense is what struggled the most. The defense held their own. They kept him in the game most of the season. There was only a couple, three games where really it was out of hand as far as the defense goes. Scoring more than 24 points against the Rams, and I think their defense is pretty solid. Obviously, they have to figure out a couple things. They got to figure out the linebacker situation. They need to add some depth in that cornerback room, and then obviously they need to figure out how they can better stop the run. I know that sounds like a lot, but really we need to get this offensive firing off because they have to be able to score more than 18 points a game to really be successful and to, be a threat moving
Yeah,
forward.
no, 100%. I think we're used to the Sean McVay offense being this very explosive offense they're getting chunk plays at ease, and that just there were times this year where I think offense felt hard, which is just weird to say. Under Sean McVay. So if you can get those explosives, make things a little easier. I think a guy like Matthew Golden definitely does that for you. At running back, I love Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee. He's if after drafting Blake Coleman in the third round last year, I don't know if they'll go running back in the third round again. It's not completely off the table, but he would be a guy in that range. Bashul Tootin from Virginia Tech. He ran a 4.32 40, just insane speed. Does have some fumbling issues, which the Rams fans won't want to talk about after the Kyren Williams. But he did tell me it is a focal point and it is something he's working on. And then Brashard Smith from SMU is a running back, but he converted from wide receiver, so he has that receiving ability that I think the Rams are kind of lacking at the running back position a little bit. So I did write it in one of my columns. If there was ever a draft where the Rams needed to add explosive playmakers, this is certainly the one that you would want to be in.
Yeah, for sure. And I as far as the running back situation goes, where are we at with Ronnie Rivers as a free agent? I know he got injured towards the end of the season, if I remember right.
So yeah.
So the Rams are going to need a depth piece there. I doubt that they're going to. He's a restricted free agent, so I guess they could bring him back for.
I think the original round tender is like $3 million. So I think you're probably better off not tendering him and then seeing if you can maybe get him back on the vet minimum. But I can also see them completely moving off from him as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, you have Kyren who is a workhorse, but you have to give him somebody who's going to complement him. Obviously, I think the fumbling issues more came with just the high percentage use of using Kyren. The more you use him, the more you're tiring the guy out, and the more likely he's going to have those kind of failure points.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he had like an 80%, or it was one of the higher percent, like just running back belt. He had one of the higher percentage carries up for one NFL team this past season. So just getting somebody that kind of take that load off of him, I think would be huge.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the other picks that you had. Going into the 100th overall pick, you kind of suggested defensive lineman Ty Robinson from Nebraska. Mostly kind of what is that run stopper, right? To kind of help maybe replace Bobby Brown if he does not come back.
Yeah, so I think if you want I think you want a run stopping defensive lineman. I think you're looking at I really like CJ West out of Indiana. Okay. I think he's one of the better run stopping defensive linemen last year, and kind of ironically Joshua Farmer out of Florida State. If they could add another Florida State defensive lineman to the front four, I'm not sure anybody would complain too much after how last year went.
Right.
Yeah, so those are two run stoppers. Not to say Ty Robinson can't stop the run, sure. But he is a little small. I think he's only like 288 pounds or something like that. But just super explosive, extremely versatile. Can move up and down the line. I think he's a guy that the Rams are really going to like from a personality standpoint, and just what he put on tape at Nebraska as well.
Awesome. Anybody else? I know you already mentioned a couple other defensive linemen. Anybody else that stands out to you?
I could see them taking what's the guy's name out of Kentucky really fast. that's I'm terrible with names. I'm great with schools. It's Kentucky defensive lineman. But Deion Walker from Kentucky. He was at the Senior Bowl. Did really well. Darius Robinson is a guy from Toledo. They had a really good Senior Bowl that I could see them drafting. Just super quick off the snap. Again, really explosive. Can play up and down the line. Not really that run stopper though. Cam Jackson, that guy's an absolute freight train. I think he's like 6'6", 340 pounds. He's gigantic. But he'll be a defensive lineman that you can probably take there probably late on day 3. It can be that one tech that can kind of be that run stopping player that they do need to try to add this offseason.
Okay. So defensive line, we're pretty good for the most part there. Obviously need some depth pieces, some rotational pieces there. But let's talk about the offensive line. I feel like the Rams have a really good offensive line starting 5. The problem that has been in the past is that we never seem to be able to keep our starting 5 healthy for a majority of the season. So I think we're looking at depth pieces right now. Obviously, we're moving on from Jonah Jackson. Joe Noteboom is also one of those characters who's also a free agent. I really doubt they bring him back again, unless it's some sort of vet minimum and ordeal. Is there any other offensive lineman that you've seen throughout the prospect that the Rams may want to pick up, or based on your Snead snacks? I know you're also into the Snead snacks.
Yes.
Who do you think Snead is eyeing to help?
Yeah, I could see them liking Jonah Monheim out of USC. I think he played 4 of the 5 positions on the offensive line. I think he projects a little better at center, which is kind of what the Rams need as well. It would be nice for them to get a depth piece there behind Bo Limmer, maybe add a little competition there as well, and see how that shakes out. And then it is a very versatile offensive line group. I'd say it's hard to find guys that don't have a lot of experience at multiple positions, which is good, and it is what the Rams like. I think if you're looking for a guy like I could see them really kind of focusing on a right tackle option behind Rob Havenstein. Jack Nelson from Wisconsin. He was awesome to talk to. Actually brought up a story where Rob Havenstein last year at a spring practice was just there, and him and Havenstein stayed after that practice for like an hour and a half, just working on his pass set. So those two players have a relationship, and we know how much Rams like their Wisconsin offensive linemen. So I could see a fit there, and kind of see him being that heir apparent to Havenstein. Speaking with Brandon Thorne from the Trench Warfare Substack at the Combine and at the Senior Bowl, he pointed out Ozzie Trapilo out of Boston College, and he actually comped Trapilo to Rob Havenstein. So I think that's an option there. Jalen Travis out of Iowa State, he'll have a little bit of the Nate Scheelhaus Iowa State connection there. Again, just super versatile player. Yeah, I think you once you get outside that first tier of offensive linemen, you kind of get out of your starters. But I think there are some developmental players that with coaching in the right ecosystem can turn into a starter down the line.
So when it goes for the Rams, where do you see those offensive linemen falling in like the draft aspect of it? Where would the Rams have to try to pick those players up if they want some of those starting caliber players to help maybe, go to take over the Rob Havenstein piece whenever he does decide to retire or move on? Where do you see those chips to fall?
I think you're looking at like pick 100, pick 126, in that range. I could definitely see pick 126 being an offensive lineman. If you're looking at just interior offensive lineman, like center, they can probably find one of those like they did with Bo Limmer, just because of the positional value. You can typically get those guys late on day 3.
Okay, cool. Okay, so really one of the I got two of them. One of them is a quick one. Any quarterbacks that we should be looking at? Do you think the Rams are going to find their Stafford replacement, or let's say their Stinson Bennett replacement?
Yeah, so I know a lot of fans are high on Jackson Dart. I do like Jackson Dart as well. I just don't know if I would want to take him in the first round or early second round. I just don't know if I feel. I think there are other needs to get this roster over the hump to compete than taking a quarterback that high. So if we're just focusing on day two, maybe pick 100 and further back. Tyler Show out of Louisville kind of gives you those Matthew Stafford arm angles per se. He's really creative with his arm. He's a good arm, able to get those just crazy arm angles that Stafford's able to get to, which is always fun. He's an older prospect though at 26. The guy that I would really keep my eye out on though, and my Syracuse bias is gonna show here, but I absolutely love Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. I think he's a perfect fit for a Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan West Coast offense. And I think people just have a lot of negative feelings about him after his year one at Ohio State, and then, but if you go watch, throw away the Pitt tape where he threw like 5 interceptions. That was just a bad game. Throw that out and watch his tape. And he did a lot of really good things this year. I was at the Syracuse Miami game. Keys went down 21-0, and against Cam Ward's Miami, McCord led a 21-0 comeback. He had a really good second year as a starter, and like I said, I think just his accuracy, his timing, I think just he does have the ability. He's not really mobile, but he has the ability to extend the play a little bit and make plays outside the pocket. I do think he is a perfect fit for the Sean McVay offense.
All right. Last question I got is the linebacker position. I think that is one of the other positions on the defensive side of the ball that Ram fans really want to see replaced. I think that they are people are over Roseboom, who I think did an admirable job this past season. Obviously, we have Spates, who's really coming into his own, but they really want someone to kind of be that Ernest Jones kind of person who can really help lead that offense. Be that green dot, that type of player. Do you have anybody that you would put out there?
Yeah, so I know a lot of Rams fans are gonna have their eyes on Geo Campbell out of Alabama in the first round. I would take his name, just throw it out the window. It's not gonna happen. Not how they value the linebacker position. I don't really see it. But I first saw Jeffrey Bassa out of Oregon at the Senior Bowl, and every time that I've talked to him, every time that I've seen him since, I metaphorically fall more head over heels for that guy. He's an awesome player. He kind of gives you that coverage compliment that you kind of need. Space is really good in the run game, absolutely fantastic in the run game, but he tends to get a little lost in coverage. Whereas Bassa, he's a former safety, really excels in coverage, and he is smaller, so he can get pushed around in the run game a little bit, but he does navigate through traffic well. Just an absolute leader. He was one of my favorite just people to talk to at the combine. He talked a lot about what he does from a preparation standpoint to make sure, when he's wearing that green dot, he knows where every guy on his defense needs to be. He knows the calls. Just an absolute just film rat per se, for lack of a better phrase, I guess. I think he's probably a third round guy. If we're looking more towards day 3, Jack Kaiser out of Notre Dame, he's I think broke the program record for most games played at Notre Dame this past season. Played there for 6 years, but again, just one of those. He brings that coverage complement that you kind of need next to Spates, and just somebody that can be the leader of a defense. Same with Jay Higgins out of Iowa. Those are 3 guys that I really have my eye on right now in terms of linebackers.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great information. I think there's so much that happens at the combine and so many player prospects that it goes through. I think a lot of Rams fans, they're trying to figure out, they see the bright shiny objects, the round one picks, but really it comes down to where the Rams really find their gemstones is always within that that 3 to 6 range. Obviously, we've found many gemstones with Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. A lot of gemstones come out of the later rounds. So those are the picks that we always like to.
And Snead is once again hoarding those 6th-round picks. He's got 4 from this year. So
4. I knew 3, but I forgot. I didn't remember the 4th one.
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah.
So the Rams are looking good when it comes to the 6th-rounders.
Yeah. Hopefully Snead's able to cook something up when we find some more of those late round gems.
Real quick, we had one person come up with a question. I don't know. What do you guys think about Tyler Batty or Ahmad Hassan from Boise State?
I did watch a little bit of Ahmad Hassan from the at the Shrine Bowl, and he did catch my eye a little bit. Not somebody I talked to at the combine at all, but as far as like a late round option on the defensive line, he's extremely versatile. I think a little bit more comfortable there on the edge. But yeah, I think I wouldn't rule out. I think adding another edge rusher to the rotation. I think they could use a speed guy. Nick Hampton just kind of hasn't worked out. So I think adding some depth there potentially late in the draft makes a lot of sense.
Perfect. Well, Blaine, thank you again for being on this pod. Again, it was great seeing you at the combine. Hope it doesn't have to be a whole year until we get to see each other again. Right. But hopefully we'll be able to bring you back on and talk more Rams football with you.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I always enjoy coming on, and yeah, it was good seeing you last week as well. And hopefully one of these days we're able to connect at a Rams game.
Yeah, that would be good. Okay, last question for you, I promise, and then we're gonna wrap it up. What's your late round cornerback?
Upton Stout out of Western Kentucky. He is a little smaller, but I talked to that guy at the Senior Bowl, and he literally had like blood underneath his gums. Just an absolute tough guy. Plays a lot bigger than his size, and those are the types of guys that the Rams like. So yeah, I absolutely love Upton Stout.
Perfect. Hey, he loved that guy too. So. Great on that. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up with this week's episode of the East Coast Rams podcast. Again, thank you, Blaine, for coming out. Please make sure that you check out all of his articles at the Turf Show Times. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I think he has about 12 to 15 different articles just on the combine itself, let alone all the other stuff that went on this week. So please go check him out. Also, X is the best place to follow you, correct?
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Right, so please go make sure.
On X at B Grisak TST. And if you have Blue Sky, I think it's the same handle over there as well.
Perfect. So definitely please make sure you are following Blaine. Go find him, follow him. He always has great insights into what the Rams may or may not be doing. But for us, you can find us at eastcoastrams.com. You can find us on X at East Coast Rams. You can find us on Instagram and Threads at East Coast Rams Pod. You can also find us on Blue Sky as well. Somewhere at East Coast Rams, just do a search, you'll find us there. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to to our YouTube page, youtube.com/@EastCoastRams. If you're watching us live, thank you again. If you're watching us on demand, please make sure that you give us a like and a follow and a comment. It would really help boost our ratings and our findings on YouTube. And with that, we're going to wrap it up, and we will see you guys next time.